My name is Sienna Clark, and the day I walked into my father's office, I didn't want to fight. I didn't want to prove myself or win anything. I wasn't there for power or pity. I just wanted a conversation. 5 minutes of eye contact. 1 ounce of acknowledgement. A little respect, maybe. Something human. I rehearsed my words the night before like I was preparing for court. Not too bold. Not too soft. Not too emotional. Just balanced. I wore a simple blouse. Neutral lipstick. Tied my hair back so I wouldn't look like I was trying too hard. He didn't even look up right away. The sound of his pen against paper filled the silence like it had more value than my presence. And when he finally did meet my eyes, something inside me knew. That look wasn't new. I'd just been too hopeful to see it before. "You don't belong here," he said. Cold, flat, like I was some stranger who had wandered in off the street. "This isn't your world. Get out." He didn't yell. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. Those 5 words felt like a slap. That kept echoing inside me, even after I stood up. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I just walked out, heels clicking too loud on the tile. Each step away from him felt like one away from the little girl who used to beg to sit beside him at meetings. The daughter who used to trace the company logo with her finger and dream. I sat in my car, hands shaking on the wheel. I stared at my reflection and thought, this is what it feels like to be erased by the man who helped create you. But I wasn't broken, because my mother may be gone, but her voice was still alive in me. "One day, it'll be yours." He didn't know. She left something for me. And that door he slammed shut? I was already holding the key. My mother never spoke loudly. She didn't command rooms the way my father did. She didn't bark orders or interrupt meetings. But people listened to her, and when she looked at you, it felt like she saw the version of you were still becoming. She believed in soft power and secrets. She was always planting something for later. Tulip bulbs in the fall, letters in boxes, money in places no one thought to look. "For you," she used to whisper. One day, as a kid, I didn't understand. I thought she was being poetic, nostalgic, like mothers often are when they fold your shirts too carefully or save every handmade birthday card. But now I know she was leaving a trail, a quiet map for the moment she wouldn't be there to guide me. After I left my father's office, her voice echoed louder than his. I went to the drawer where she used to keep her wedding rings. She hadn't worn them in years. I lifted the tiny mahogany box and found a key taped to the bottom. I knew what it was. I'd seen her use it once for the file cabinet in the back room of her old art studio. A cabinet my father never touched. Inside were records, bank statements, legal papers, faded envelopes with my name in her handwriting. There it was. The trust. Set up 15 years ago. Funded by her inheritance, the money she'd received from her side of the family and never let him spend. She had protected it like a secret child. In that moment, I realized she knew this day would come. Not hoped, knew. She couldn't stop him from becoming who he was, but she could protect me from being swallowed by his shadow. My hands trembled as I read. 35% of Clark Holdings, legally mine. My heart didn't leap. It broke. For all the times I thought she'd been passive, silent, fading. But she hadn't been fading. She'd been fighting for me in a way he never would. And now, it was my turn. The lawyer looked at me like I was made of glass and grief. Like he'd seen this before, daughters walking in with quiet fury and faded documents, hoping the dead could still speak on their behalf. He flipped through the papers slowly. I watched his eyebrows rise, his mouth part slightly. He took off his glasses and leaned back like the trust itself had some kind of weight. "This isn't just a gesture," he said softly. "She gave you power." There it was again, that word, power. It never sat right in my mouth. My father wielded it like a weapon. My mother hid it like a flame in her palm, shielding it from the wind. But now it was in mine. The documents were real, witnessed, sealed, dated, filed before my mother's cancer returned, before she started sleeping more than talking, long before my father started calling Clark Holdings his empire without blinking. It was her money. All of it. The first investment, the second, the third. Every round of expansion tied to her inheritance. He had the vision, maybe, but she had the means. And me? I had the proof. In her handwriting, in her signatures, in the deliberate way she listed me as beneficiary. Not him, not the company, not a foundation or a future trust. Just me. The lawyer ran his thumb down the legal clause that named me as a 35% owner of Clark Holdings. Not tomorrow, not someday. Now. I left the office with a folder under my arm and my mother's voice in my chest. Not a roar, a steady hum, like she was saying, "Good, you're listening now." I didn't feel victorious. I felt sad. Sad that I had to do this. Sad that love turned into paperwork and sealed envelopes. Sad that my father never saw me coming. But I was coming. Not with noise, not with drama, with facts, with legacy, with blood on paper. And when I walked back into that building, I wouldn't knock next time. People love to talk about how my father built Clark Holdings from scratch. No handouts, they say. All grit and guts. They write articles about him. Business magazines with bold headlines: self-made titan, visionary CEO, the architect of his empire. He walks into boardrooms like a god among men. Everyone claps before he even speaks. But here's what they never write. He didn't build it alone. And it wasn't all his. The land for the first office space? Bought with her money. The seed investment. To get him through his first failed launch? Her inheritance. The private equity connections he brags about at Galis? Her family's name opened those doors. He never mentioned that part. Never once thanked her publicly. Not at his keynote speeches. Not in his interviews. Not even at her funeral. He stood at her graveside and called her supportive. That was the word he chose. Supportive. Like she was some sidekick. A shadow. A stepping stone. I remember gripping the edge of my dress so tightly that day, I tore a seam. He didn't even notice. He forgot that empires built on silence tend to echo. And I was the echo. Now, I saw it clearly. He spent years polishing his image while erasing hers. And mine. He made me feel like a visitor in a company I was born into. Like I had to earn a last name I already carried. But the truth was never buried. Just buried alive. In contracts. In forgotten file drawers. In the kind of love that doesn't shout, but signs things in advance. My mother knew he'd try to claim it all. That he'd rewrite the origin story with his name under every chapter. But she left a footnote he couldn't edit. Me? I wasn't an accident. I was the receipt. And now that I'd read the fine print of his legacy, I was ready to return it stamped, notarized, and written in stone. I didn't walk back in alone. I could have. Maybe a few months ago, I would have tried. To play nice, to explain, to appeal to logic and shared bloodlines. But not anymore. That version of me had already been turned away, dismissed like a stranger. So I brought someone who wouldn't be. Her name was Elise Monroe. Sharp suits, sharper mind. The kind of woman who doesn't blink when men raise their voices. She sat across from me in her office, flipping through my mother's documents like she was reading a script she already knew by heart. She looked up and said, "This is airtight." I don't know why, but I felt like crying. Not because I doubted the papers, but because she didn't. She didn't treat me like a little girl chasing ghosts. She treated me like what I was: an heir, a rightful partner, a woman walking into war with the receipts in hand. Elise printed copies, dozens, marked every clause, highlighted the sections that couldn't be argued with, couldn't be ignored. She was calm, methodical, a force in heels. "Your father will push back," she said, "but legally, he can't push you out." I nodded, my fingers tight around the folder like it was armor. We practiced what I'd say, not because I didn't know the words, but because Elise wanted me to control the room, to speak from fact, not fury, to speak like someone who had always belonged, not someone begging to be let in. When the day came, I wore black, not for mourning, for clarity, for power. I walked past the receptionist who used to smile at me with pity. I walked past the assistant who always forgot my name. I walked into the boardroom, Elise by my side, and took my seat at the table, not at the end, not in the corner. I took the seat directly across from my father. And for once, he looked up. This time, I didn't ask to speak. This time I brought the terms. He didn't say my name. He just stared. like I was a glitch in his reflection, a smudge on the glass he couldn't wipe clean. My presence wasn't expected, he hadn't been warned. The board members shuffled papers, cleared throats, glanced between us like they'd walked into the wrong meeting. I didn't speak right away. I let the silence spread, let it wrap around the oak walls and settle over his empire like dust. My mother taught me that. Let them sit in it. Let them feel what they've created. Elise was the first to move. She opened the folder, laid down copies of the trust like playing cards on velvet. Not rushed, not aggressive, just certain. These documents show legal ownership of 35% of Clark Holdings, she said clearly, signed by Margaret Evelyn Clark, effective immediately upon transfer. My father didn't flinch, but I saw his jaw tighten. That tick in his temple he got when things slipped out of his control. He reached for the papers with the same hand that once held mine across crosswalks and courtroom steps. Now, he looked at my mother's signature like it was a betrayal. He didn't speak. The others did, one by one. Legal questions, verifications, a few awkward attempts at diplomacy, but no one said it wasn't valid. And no one could. I kept my eyes on him the whole time, not to gloat, to witness, to watch a man confront the ghost of the woman he'd tried to erase and the daughter she left behind like a sealed letter. When it was finally my turn to speak, I didn't raise my voice. I'm not here to destroy anything, I said, steady and low. I'm here to claim what was always mine. He opened his mouth, closed it, and for the first time in my life, I saw something in him I'd never seen before. Fear. He knew. He'd buried the roots so deep, he thought they'd rot, but I grew anyway, right through the cracks in his foundation. He always had this glow about him in meetings, that untouchable confidence. The way people leaned in when he spoke, laughed at jokes that weren't funny, nodded like bobbleheads to every decision. My father didn't command the room, he absorbed it, but not today. Today, his skin looked pale under the soft yellow lights. The blood had drained from his face, but he sat up straight, trying to keep the performance alive, trying to remind everyone who he was, but they weren't looking at him the same way. Not anymore. They were looking at me. T, the woman sitting across the table with decades-old documents that said, "You underestimated the wrong girl." He cleared his throat. This was never discussed. Elise didn't flinch. It didn't need to be. Legally, Margaret Clark's trust bypassed internal review. She was well within her rights. He stared at me then, like I'd tricked him, like I was disloyal. But what was loyalty to a man who saw me as a footnote? All I could think about was my mother, the quiet corners of her presence, the way she used to rub circles into the back of my hand when I was nervous, the way she'd say, "You don't have to shout to be heard, Sienna, just speak the truth." So I did. "I wanted a conversation that day in your office," I said. "Not power, not a favor, just a chance. And you slammed the door, told me I didn't belong. But you were wrong." I paused, letting the weight of it land. "I belong here because Mom built this with you, and she made sure her part, my part, would never be erased." His mouth opened. Nothing came out. No apology, no denial, just silence, the kind that rattles your bones when you realize the story you've told for years is missing a chapter and now the author's daughter is reading it aloud. And for the first time, he looked small, not powerful, not brilliant, not the legend he'd painted himself to be. I could have demanded a lot that day. I had every legal right to storm the gates, rip up his seat of power, take what was mine and watch the tower shake. And believe me, I wanted to. The girl inside, me, the one he told to get out, still burned. But I didn't come for fire. I came for air, for space to breathe as an equal. So I looked him in the eye, not with vengeance, but clarity. "Let's talk again," I said, "as partners." This time, you could hear the tension crack in the boardroom like glass underfoot. The words didn't land like an explosion. They landed like thunder after silence, slow, certain, inevitable. His face didn't change. Not much, but his hands gripped the arms of his chair. I think that was the first time he realized this wasn't temporary. This wasn't a tantrum or a phase. This was permanence. "I'm not here to destroy your legacy," I continued. I'm here to take back my mother's. He tried to gather himself, straighten his spine. His voice came out quieter than I'd ever heard it. She should have told me. I nodded. She did. You just didn't listen. No one in that room said a word. Not one of the suits who used to pat me on the head or call me kiddo in hallways. Not the CFO who once called my application to the company symbolic. Not the assistant who always offered me coffee but never asked me what I wanted. They were watching history rewrite itself in real time, with no edits. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. My presence was loud enough. My mother's signature was loud enough. The truth was loud enough. And when he finally nodded the faintest, smallest nod, I saw it. The shift. He knew this was no longer his company alone. And I was no longer just his daughter. I was his counterpart. And I had just taken my seat not by invitation, but by right. The office felt different after that. Not because the furniture changed, or the lighting, or the boardroom where I dropped my truth like a lit match. No, the shift was quieter than that. Slower, like breath returning to lungs that had forgotten how to inhale. People started greeting me with eye contact. Not everyone. Not right away, but enough. Enough to know that something had cracked open. My name was on emails now. My signature on memos. Sienna Clark, co-owner. No longer hidden behind legacy. No longer just a daughter. But I didn't walk in and become him. I didn't bark orders. I didn't rename wings of the building or fire his allies. I didn't need to erase what was built. I just needed to remind everyone who helped build it. My first decision was simple. I took down the portrait, the one of him in the main lobby. The 10-foot shrine to his ego. In its place, I hung a photo of my mother. Not formal, not posed. Just her in her garden. Eyes soft, hair wild, laughing at something I can't remember. The caption below read, Margaret Evelyn Clark, co-founder. I got emails about it. Some subtle, some angry, some asking if it was necessary. Yes, it was. Because inheritance isn't just about money. It's about memory. It's about naming the ones who were never given their pages in the story. It's about making sure daughters grow up knowing what silence often hides, that love can be fierce even in whispers, and that legacies don't belong to the loudest voice in the room. I wasn't trying to become him. I was becoming the version of me she always knew I could be. The one she raised in the quiet. The one she protected with every dotted line and sealed envelope. This wasn't revenge. It was recognition. And it was only the beginning. Some victories aren't loud. They don't come with applause or headlines. They arrive in the stillness, in the morning light that hits your desk differently, in the way your name holds weight when it's spoken, in the breath you take when you realize you no longer have to prove you belong. I walked through Clark Holdings with different steps now. Not heavier, not faster, just grounded. The kind of walk that comes when you stop carrying someone else's version of who you are. The hallways used to feel cold, sterile, built more for ego than people. But I'd started changing that. Bit by bit, plants where there were none. Staff listening sessions instead of mandates. Transparency reports on decisions that used to happen behind closed doors, and the boardroom, it still held that long, polished table. But now, my seat wasn't borrowed. It was mine. Sometimes I still caught my father watching me during meetings. Not with anger, not anymore. Just distance. Like he was learning a language he once refused to hear. He rarely said much these days. But one afternoon, as we passed in the hallway, he paused and said, "Your mother would have been proud." It wasn't an apology, but it was a start. That evening, I stayed late. The building emptied out. The noise dimmed. I walked to the east wing, the one with the stone wall. It used to have a quote from one of his speeches carved into it. Something hollow about winning and legacy. I had it replaced. Now it reads, "Protected in silence, past in love," carved in stone. Margaret Evelyn Clark. He touched the words with my fingers. The stone cool and still. Not a memorial, a reminder. She gave me more than a percentage. She gave me the right to speak, the space to lead, the proof that power can be quiet and still move mountains. This wasn't just a business anymore. It was hers. It was mine, and it would never be taken again.